Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of NBA Sports Talk. Tonight, we are going to get into the topic. How do you, how do I deal with failure in our lives? And we want to really tackle this subject. And the reason why we want to tackle it, we want to go back to the interview that Giannis Antetokounmpo had with a reporter who asked him the question, do you consider this season a failure? And when the exchange was completed, what we got was a TED talk on how to handle failure, not just in sports, but how to handle failure in life. And we're going to talk about that and more right now on NBA Sports Talk. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to NBA Sports Talk. I'm your host, Walter Strong. And if you are new here and you want to talk about NBA basketball and more from a fan's perspective, we welcome you to the show. And as we said tonight, we're going to get into the discussion how to handle failure, not just in sports, but in life the right way. And so if you're watching me on YouTube or LinkedIn, do me a favor, give me a hashtag Team Live in the chat. And on the replay, if you're watching the replay of this video podcast, give me a hashtag Team Replay in the comments section. As I said, this topic that we're going to tackle comes from the discussion, the interview that happened a little over 3 months ago with the Milwaukee Bucks, Giannis Antetokounmpo, where he was being asked the question by a reporter after them being eliminated by the playoffs. Do you consider this season a failure? And his response was, it was great. It turned out to be a TED Talk. And so we wanted to talk about this tonight. But before we get into this tonight, we got a few gentlemen that's in the chat. We got a legend we got some legends in the chat. So we want to say good evening, first of all, to Mr. JP High Tech from Perfect Zone Productions. If you need graphic designing, I know this is not sponsored, JP, but allow me, because I got to show you love, got to show you love. If you need graphic designing, if you need web designing, if you need a complete brand makeover where this man will turn you into a star, where you can get traffic and influence, this is the man you want to look up on social media. Good evening, and then I cut my good man, part of the crew of NBA Sports Talk community, Mr. James Bush, in the chat. Good evening. All right, so let's get into this topic, and then right before this show is over, I want to, we're going to get into this topic, and we've always talked about bringing on fans of teams on, whether if you're a fan of the Milwaukee Bucks, a fan of the New York Knicks. We want to bring fans on to be able to talk to one another about how we feel about this subject. Let me put this here. Come on. Okay. We're going to get this right. We're going to get this technology right. We're going to put this in presentation mode, because we want this to be boom. Okay. Presentation. See, you have to deal with technology sometime. We're going to get this right. There we go. Presents. All right. Perfect. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on our guest tonight, who's going to help us tackle this subject. Okay, we got him on? James. Okay, no, he's there. I don't see him.
I'm here.
Okay, there he is. Okay, let's put this into. Okay, now we got us both on. There we go. All right, we got our brother on from Prayer Request Live, Mr. James Bush, in the house. This man is a true Milwaukee Bucks fan. Just hey man, welcome to the show. Being the first guest of NBA Sports Talk, sir. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me. JP High Tech, what's up? That's my guy. He's about 40 minutes away from me.
Okay, cool. So let's get into this topic here. We're gonna roll on how it's working or not. And so the first thing I wanted to talk about is there we go. There you go. So I picked a couple of things from that interview. And one of the things Giannis talked about was having the right perspective about when you lose a game. You know, some people when they look at losing the game, they look at it from a standpoint that as from the reporter's perspective, do you view this as a failure? But Giannis, he turned it into a TED talk, James, and said, you know, these are steps. This is a process. When you heard that and when he talked about having the right mindset and perspective, what went off in your head hearing Giannis talk about how to handle failure and disappointment?
That doesn't really surprise me, Walter. It really doesn't surprise me because that is who Giannis has been, a very authentic young man, always listening, always trying to learn from others, always trying to grow, setting a high standard for his teammates and himself. So
Mm-hmm.
he basically, that didn't surprise me, and I was kind of curious in terms of how the public would receive it if they're thinking, "Oh, he's just being trite or something." It's like, no, this is who Giannis is.
Definitely, and the way he kept saying, I'm not gonna make this personal. I'm not gonna make this personal. I don't want you to feel like I'm attacking you, but what we've experienced here is we're gonna work through this. Okay, here we go. We're gonna get this right. We're gonna get this right.
You're
There
good,
we
bro.
go.
It's
Okay.
live. That's what we do
It's
when we're
live.
live.
You know, it's live, but
It's
hey, we're gonna push through it. Me being such a perfectionist, you
I
know
know,
me, I'm a
I know,
perfectionist.
I
But
know.
the thing is, like you said, his way and his response was, you know, he recognized first of all, this was the same question that the reporter asked him last year, and then he acknowledged that when you asked me that question before, I didn't respond to the question the right way or the best way. And as a result, now you're providing me the opportunity to set the record straight on you asking me a question like this because the season, though it was disappointing, it's not a failure and it comes to the right mindset. And so what do you what is the lessons that you think we need to take as men, as content creators and just, people in life? Why is it important just to have a right mindset on how to deal with failure?
I think what he demonstrated, and now can we shout out the reporter?
Sure.
Can we
Sure.
say, all right, because this was Eric Neem of The Atlantic who asked this question last
Mm-hmm.
year and asked this question again this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what Giannis has done was he helped me to understand the importance of staying in control and using a little emotional intelligence in terms of saying, "Hey, I'm not going to make this personal." And like you said, putting on a lesson, man. He talked about the things he mentioned, even though he may not have said those words in specific. He talked about the resilience that a person needs. And that's not just in sports. That's in
Mm-hmm.
life, man. We fail, we fall down, and we don't get the big contract, or we don't get the job we want, we don't sign that client or whatever, and we have to be resilient and be able to bounce back from that and build on those, set new goals and have a
Mm-hmm.
different mindset shift and do some self-reflection. He covered all of that. You're right, it was a TED talk.
Definitely. Want to give a shout out to Mr. Roy Tech Troublemaker is in the building today, this evening on NBA Sports Talk. We're talking about 5 important tips on how you and I can handle failure, not just in sports, but in life here on NBA Sports Talk with Walter Strong III. Then, along with that TED Talk, discussion that him and the reporter had, it made me say, okay, I need to go back and look at what the definition of failure is. And you know, that next night, Ernie, Kenny, Shaq, Charles, they begin to have a discussion on it themselves because it was just such a hot topic. And Shaq said, you know, to him, the definition of failure was one, you know, not accomplishing the mission. Two, the inability to complete a task. But I love what Kenny said. Kenny said that the definition of failure was it's not fulfilling a required action or thing that you have. What's your thoughts on Shaq's perspective and Kenny's perspective on how to handle failure?
You know, and you're talking about guys who have won at the highest level, but
Mhm.
you know, and they've also lost, and so they were in a very unique position to speak on it. And I'm glad they did. Like I said, I kind of agree. If you're going to look at it from the pure definition, then what they're saying is kind of spot on. That's correct. You had a mission, you had an accomplishment, you didn't achieve it. However, I guess we don't want to just say putting a positive spin or positive light on it, because sometimes you know you hear athletes talk all the time. They remember the losses, man. They remember those, and you know, and that can be a source of fuel, motive.
Mhm.
You know, and again, it's an opportunity to kind of regroup, reshape, and it speaks a lot if you can learn from you know this, Walt, you've been around the block, bro.
Mhm.
uh we learn more from the failures in our lives than we
Right, right.
actually do from the victories.
Good point. Good point. Right, right. Because sometimes you start to get on a winning streak, or you start to have a string of success in your life, and you could turn around and get caught up in the moment of the success. You kind of drift away from the principles and the fundamentals that you were learning to, first of all, get that winning streak, or to get that opportunity of success of landing client after client. And then as a result, you drift away from the fundamentals and principles of what you need to do, whether if it's making calls, follow-ups, whether if it's um, in terms of just making sure you are you're coming in early in the morning, you're staying late on some nights, so that way you can experience the success. But when you're struggling, you're in the grind, you're doing everything right, and you're learning some life lessons. So I think Kenny's explanation and Shaq's were spot on. They were
Mhm.
spot on. They
Yeah, you got
definitely
to
were spot
keep
on.
that edge, man. You have to keep that, as they say, that eye of the tiger, that hunger. And I think when people win, especially in sports, when they win, and it
Mhm,
seems like sometimes they take the foot off the pedal a little bit because
mhm,
you've reached the summit. But know this, everybody's still coming for you. So,
mhm.
and I think that's a lot like life. It kind of mirrors life in a lot of ways. You have to find a way to take what's happened, build on that,
Mhm,
do self-reflection, and this is good for us as people, as men.
mhm.
This
Yes.
is really good for us to do that, and set new goals and visualize this stuff. Become creative, become adaptive to what's going on, and figure out. Okay, I've got new goals. I have new opportunities here now. I've got that hunger, that edge back. Let's see what we can do.
Right. Definitely. Definitely. Hey, we're talking about 5 tips on how do you handle and deal with failure, not just in sports, but on life, here on NBA Sports Talk with Walter Strong III. If you're getting great value out of this, do me a favor here in the live chat. Make sure you click that thumbs up button for me. Share this on your favorite social media platform. If you are part of Team Replay, whether on LinkedIn or YouTube, please definitely in the comments section, give us a hashtag Team Replay in the comments. Click that thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to the new NBA Sports Talk YouTube channel, where we talk NBA basketball and more from a fan's perspective. Would solely appreciate if you hit that subscribe button for us. Kenny would go on to say in their little discussion that they were having on Inside the NBA during that interview discussion, that success is also about doing what was required. And he began to say, okay, was Giannis trying to do everything what was required of him? Was he trying to put himself in the best position for his team to win, despite his injuries, despite his setbacks, despite the momentum of the team? Was he, as the star player, trying to put himself in the best position? And it begs the question to us, again, as NBA fans, as men, as content creators, whatever hat that you wear, do we put ourselves in the best position to do what's required? Your thoughts on that, James?
That's a good question. I don't really have a negative in terms of the reporter asking the question, because when I think about it, and when the year the Bucks won the title, Giannis had gotten hurt early in the playoffs. I mean, that hyperextended leg that could have took him completely out. The team seemed to rise, and they seemed to, I mean, think about that. They were down 2-0 to the Nets. They were down 2-0 to the Hawks. They were down 2-0 to the Suns, and they found a way to come back and so I think he literally did what he had to do in that particular scenario, whatever treatment there was, whatever, to make sure he returned to the court and then top the thing off. He doesn't get enough credit for this, man.
Right.
Closing this out with a 50-point game and some of the most iconic blocks in the playoffs we've seen. And so I think that, like you're saying, he did all he could. This year was a little different. And I think when you underestimate an opponent, when you underestimate a situation, you could be setting yourself up for failure. They didn't take Jimmy Butler and Bam as serious as I feel like they should have. And yeah, injuries we're going to deal with, you're going to see, and that's life. That's life as well. We're going to have some setbacks, but we know what the expectations are. You make a great point. Do we set ourselves up so we can be as successful as we possibly can? Are we going to come in early? Are we going to hang back late? Those kind of things in the real life scenarios.
Definitely. Giannis would go on to say, hey, look, there are going to be times, yes, we're going to win, and there are times someone else is going to win. But the bottom line is I have to do what's required. And like you said, he kept saying to the reporter, I'm not trying to make this personal, but every time you go to a job, just because you don't get a promotion, does that mean you are a failure? I love the way, and this may sound blasphemy, so we don't want the lightning to fall from the sky when I say Michael Jordan being a Detroit Piston fan.
I'm not a Jordan fan.
But he said, hey, look, Michael Jordan was in the league for 15 years, but he only won 6 titles. Does that mean the other 9 was a failure? And I said, ooh.
Yeah.
But he's telling the truth, because I could concur with him, even when Isaiah and them was playing against Boston and the ball, he fumbled the ball, and Bird ended up, now DJ steals the ball, Bird lays it up, and boom. And then they lose to the Lakers. But after that, they're going 2 in a row. Then they lose to Chicago. So do you say those 5 seasons, were 3 of them a failure and only 2 a success? He raises a good point on terms of your perspective, doing what's required, and the steps and process to success. This was just a masterful TED Talk. Hey, if you're getting great value this evening, as we're talking about 5 tips on how to handle and deal with failure, not just in sports and life. If you're just joining us, give us a hashtag Team Live in the chat. Click that thumbs up on the replay, hashtag Team Replay on LinkedIn or YouTube. My final question I wanted to cover with you in terms of, at the end of the day, there is going to be a new season. And when I thought about that, Giannis and the Bucks get another shot at this. Just like when we lay our heads down at night, and if we're fortunate enough to be able to open our eyes, our feet touch. I like the way Denzel Washington says, when your feet hit the floor, bend down, look under the bed, get your slippers, reach under the bed, get them slippers. But while you're down there, give thanks for another shot.
Yes,
Your
sir.
thoughts on that?
Yes, sir. That's exactly every day, from a biblical standpoint, it says new mercies every day. And so we have another opportunity. And if we can learn from this scenario with Giannis and say, hey, what can I do today differently that maybe I didn't do yesterday? What is the thing I can level up on? What skill do I need to improve on? I mean, I work in academics. I work for a university here in the Nashville area, and everybody got nervous, man. They start seeing a lot of this AI going on. It's like, listen, it's a tool like anything else. Use it and try to advance and move ahead. Don't be afraid of it. I mean, but we got to use it. I'd be curious to see what the folks in the chat, what do they think about failure? How do they overcome their failures, or if we want to call them that, when you just missed the mark? How do you overcome that?
No, definitely. Let's throw it out to the audience, to Tech, to JP, those of you who are listening on LinkedIn, to my online listeners who may have not had an opportunity to make yourself known on LinkedIn or YouTube, even you on the replay, if you're listening up to this point, drop in the comments section, what's your thoughts about when you fall short on accomplishing that next goal, closing that next deal, or since we got content creators in the building today, when you post that next video or do that next live stream and you end it, and you after the first 72 hours, you don't see the results of that video performing the way that you did. How do you handle and deal with failure in your life, and how are you handling and deal with it? Would love to get your thoughts on it. I just thought this was a TED Talk that we definitely had to revisit, that Giannis gave, but we had to make sure we brought on an NBA Milwaukee Bucks fan, because you've been making yourself known week after week in the chat, and I appreciate you definitely coming on and taking some time out your schedule and saying, hey, I got to represent the Bucks. So while we're waiting for some comments, where do you see next season for the Bucks? What do you with this new coach, Adrian Griffin?
I'm encouraged because Adrian Griffin is a defensive-minded guy, and I think that's one area that they really needed to level up in. And they have a core group of people, for the most part, that know each other. And even though it's a new coach, it's a new system, there's going to still be some continuity there with the core members kind of being there. And if everybody, like with any sport, if anybody can have health, stay healthy, they have an awesome opportunity to advance, all the way to the finals. I could see them doing this. They got a really good team.
Definitely. So Tech says, well, it depends on the level of effort. If I have put so much effort into and so much into it, I take it personal, and some failures I am wise enough to pray about it. Okay, understand. And I hear what you're saying, Roy. There are times where we do take things personal, and because of the level of our expectations of what we want from what we're trying to accomplish or what we are a part of. If we have to depend on other individuals who we are a part of a team, you can turn around and take it personal. But at the same time, as Giannis kept saying, I'm not trying to make this personal. I'm just trying to help you to understand And for those in the room that this is not failure, it's a disappointment. I'm not a failure. You're not a failure, but there's steps to this. There's a
Yes.
process and there's a journey for us to learn
Yes.
from. And if you haven't um, recently listened to that interview with Giannis, it definitely, I think I've listened to it about 4 times this weekend in preparation for this show. So I
Mhm.
said, hey, instead of me listening to Denzel Washington's fail forward, add that to my playlist with Giannis's interview with that reporter, and just remind myself that there's steps to this. There's a process to this. Your thoughts on it, James?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, it's very well laid out. I mean, for him to speak on it, again, that tells me that, this was something that was thought about. This is something that wasn't just off the cuff. He's just speaking from the top of his head. He's spoken to some people about this, and he was able to articulate it in such a way, and it did seem to have a very positive response to people. And I would encourage young people to go back and listen to that. Don't get discouraged. Understand there are levels, there are steps to success, and it's a process. And don't let anybody keep you from moving forward and doing what you want to do. You can always find some motivation in this. And I think that's, like
Mhm.
you're saying, make it part of your YouTube playlist and listen to it once a week if you have to.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, because how you handle disappointment, how I handle disappointment, even in terms of I'm learning, James, if and forgive me those of you the audience who are watching Team Live or on the replay, not trying to take us to church here, but it says in Ecclesiastes chapter 3 that to everything there's a season, a time for everything under heaven and under the earth. But it's interesting, James, it says there's a time to win, but there's a time to lose,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I've pondered on that, and I said, what does that mean? A time to, because you're not gonna win every game. You're not gonna always win the division. You're not always gonna make the playoffs.
Right.
You
Right.
you're not gonna always win the finals when you're just there and you see the confetti falling down and everyone's celebrating on your own home court.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
I'm using sports as an analogy, but we could easily translate that in our own lives. And what I'm getting from that, James, is though you may experience defeat, though you may experience loss, it's how you handle it and how you interpret it. And do you learn from it to get back to that point where next time the confetti is on you?
That's it. That's the key. Is how it's one of the things in life. I've learned this myself.
Mhm.
Is how you respond
Mm.
to what happens to you in life. It's how you respond.
Mhm.
When something negative happens, we have a choice. We can have a knee-jerk reaction and go off the deep end, or we can
Mhm.
try to learn from it and grow from it. It's how we respond that
Mhm.
shows our maturity. And so that's why I'm so impressed with Giannis being still a young man, 28.
Mhm.
That's a young age in sports.
Definitely. Definitely. Well, James, I want to thank you so much for taking time out your schedule on a Sunday afternoon to come represent your Milwaukee Bucks and add some value to this conversation tonight.
Yes.
Uh, those of us who are on YouTube, social media, if they want to learn more about what you're doing and what God has you doing, where can people find you?
No, thank you for the shout out. Thank you for the
Mhm.
invitation. I am on YouTube. I have a network. I call it the Need to Know Network on James Bush on Need to Know Network on YouTube. That's where you will find our stream. We have a daily stream that we run every night at 9 o'clock Central Standard Time called Prayer Request Live, where we hear a word from the word and we just kind of wind our day down and lift one another up with some encouragement and some prayers because we need prayer every day. So that's why this thing started almost a year ago and it has grown. And I was sharing with you before the stream started that this is going into other countries now. So it's really exciting to see people are rising and saying, hey, pray for me, pray for this circumstance. So on Facebook is just my personal Facebook page, James Bush Jr., and you will find need to on YouTube, the Need to Know Network. You'll find Prayer Request Live is what we call it. Join us if you're able to, any night, 9 o'clock Central Standard Time.
All right, James, again, thank you so much for coming out this evening on this episode of NBA Sports Talk with Walter Strong III. I'm just going to pop you in the green room and have a few remarks for those who are still on Team Live, and then we will chat right after we go off the air.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Those of you who are in the chat, how we handle and deal with failure, not just in sports, in life, is going to determine on how me and you can move forward and be successful. And when I talk about success, the God type of success that God wants me and you to have. Man has his level of success, but we want the level of success that God has for us. So it is my desire that this episode, though we didn't talk about putting a ball in the basket tonight, though we didn't talk about grabbing a rebound, though we didn't talk about getting a steal and being able to, or we didn't cover tonight about who's the best, LeBron or MJ. I felt it was important to talk about a topic this evening that we can all connect with when we wake up in the morning and we go either that business we own or as an employee to the business we work for. And so the question that I have for you tonight as question of the day is, how are you going to handle the next opportunity, what appears to be failure? How will you respond to it? And how will you use it as a lesson to pull someone else up? Leave me. I know you say that's a loaded question. Yeah, I know. If you don't have a response right now in the chat, make sure you go back to Team Replay in the comment section and give us that. And again, I want to thank JP. I want to thank Tech and those of you who are on LinkedIn checking us out, and the replay crew. If you've gotten great value out of this, I want you to click that thumbs up button, share this on your favorite social media platform, and if you found value in being able to bring you on as a guest, make sure if you're in the chat, you have a favorite team, make sure you put that team on, so then when we come and discuss about that team, I can have you right next to me here on online having this conversation, because this is about the NBA fans. It's about me and you. We're not talking about NBA sports from the TV and radio analyst perspective. I think we've had enough of that. There's no disrespect to Stephen A. Smith, no disrespect to Skip Bayless, no disrespect to Shannon Sharp or Chris Broussard, but I think we've got enough of the debates. I think we've gotten enough of the takes. We're not talking about NBA sports from the athlete, former or current, if it's all the smoke or the pivot. This is going to be a show where we're going to cover NBA basketball and more from your perspective as the fan. So we'll see you on Thursday night as we get into Damian Lillard's perspective and definition of how do NBA players define having a successful career. We'll see you on Thursday on that. God bless.